Hi, this is Nahid Kazaza. Our topic for February is motivation, and we're going to spend the whole month talking about different ways that you can motivate people on your team or motivate yourself. And today we're going to actually hone in on one key question that you may not even realize that you're asking yourself when it comes to getting motivated, and that is whether or not something is worth your effort. Your worth it equation, as I like to call it, is where you're actually weighing whether or not the effort that it's going to take you to do some desired action is actually worth it to you or not worth it to you. And we do this weighing or evaluating in our heads, but often subconsciously, so we might not even be aware of it. The kinds of things that show up on the worth it side are things like having an exciting vision of the end result. So being really excited, let's say if you want to run a marathon, maybe you have that vision of crossing the finish line. Having a clear idea of your next steps. So not thinking about, gosh, what am I supposed to do next? This is so overwhelming. And instead thinking, oh, I know I need to run 3 miles today. And feeling a sense of accomplishment even if I have a long way to go. So even though a marathon's 26 miles, if I go out and I run 3 miles, I'm going to feel really great about running those 3 miles. And it's not going to bother me that I can't run 26 miles yet because I'm feeling a sense of progress. But there are all sorts of things that show up on the not worth it side. Things like no immediate payback. I know often when I'm on a diet, and I'm feeling really hungry and I have good food sitting in front of me, I know that if I put all my effort into staying away from that good food and bearing my hunger, I'm still not going to weigh any less or look any better the next day. And that can make me feel frustrated enough to say, I can eat this, no problem. Or the steps that you take might be really, really boring and tedious or difficult. It might take a lot of energy to get the focus, or it just might feel like a lot of hard work, something that you don't really feel like doing. It could be painful, like that hunger I was talking about. Or it could just be confusing. You'd be surprised how just not being clear on your next steps can make something not worth doing. So the thing to do is notice what your worth it equation is. And if you're noticing that you're procrastinating or possibly not feeling as motivated as you'd like to, you want to take a look at what your worth it equation is. Also, you can apply this to your team. If it seems like people on your team just aren't as motivated as you'd like them to be, you can think about, well, what's their worth it equation? There are 4 steps to changing your equation and tipping the scales so that you'll feel more energized. One is being very honest about your thoughts. Your motivation comes from your energy and your feelings, and I hear too many people saying, well, this is what I should do. I should be able to do this in just 10 minutes. It shouldn't be so hard for me to do. And they get into a lot of self-judgment about it. But if you have a lot of self-judgment, you're going to have a really hard time being honest about what that childish voice in your head is maybe saying about, oh, I don't want to do it. It's too hard. You have to kind of come face to face with that, and don't feel bad about it because we all have it. Step 2 is observe where you are motivated and notice what exists there that doesn't exist in areas that you're less motivated. So even if you're having trouble with procrastination, there's probably some areas of your life where you don't procrastinate at all, some things that are really easy to do. If you think really hard about what it is about those things that keeps you going, makes it easy to move forward and take action, and compare that to the things that you're struggling with a little bit, you're going to notice that there are some components missing, maybe similar to what we talked about on the prior slide. Maybe you're more confused in the situations where you're less motivated, or maybe there's not as much of an immediate payoff. Or maybe it's simply not as much of a habit, so it just feels more cumbersome to do. So once you can get clear on that, that gives you some ammunition and you can make some changes. Step 3 is actually practice making changes. So here are some things you can do. You can get a clear picture of your end result. You can make a vision board. You can write affirmations, take pictures and post them places to just remind you of how excited you are to get to that end result. You can take smaller steps that are less boring and painful. So if running 3 miles is completely overwhelming, maybe you start by walking around the block, which you could do in your sleep, but hey, at least you did something. And then give yourself accolades for that. The third thing is you have to find a way to get something out of the smaller steps. So if you do decide to not go the 3 miles and walk around the block instead, you have to feel like that's worth it. And so you have to think about, well, what good do I get out of taking this walk? Even if I never manage to get in shape enough to run the marathon, at least I'm getting a little bit more in shape. Maybe that's it. Or one thing I do is I have my little Fitbit on and I say, oh, wow, look, it's not 10,000 steps, but it's 2,000 steps. That's something. And it gives you a little bit of a sense of progress. Step 4 is learn and adjust as you go. And the most important thing is not to judge yourself for procrastinating, but at the same time, don't throw your hands up either. I see too many people banging their head against the wall, and then just eventually giving up. But one thing that you can trust is that once you adjust the equation so that the worth it side is heavier than the not worth it side, you'll naturally be motivated and you'll be compelled to act. And gosh, how free it feels when you finally break through and start taking action easily on something that was just overwhelming in the past. It's just amazing what happens when those scales finally shift and it starts feeling worth it to make the effort. And then you just keep building and building and building momentum. You know, having lack of motivation can just kill your dreams. It can almost feel like you don't have power over your own life. And it's easy to give up, especially if you feel like you have a little rebel inside. But keep in mind that this is actually not a fight. It's simply an equation that you're making in your mind. And with everything that you know and everything that you're experiencing, the not worth it side is simply winning in the cases where you find yourself dragging. But you have the power to change those variables, and when you do, you will break free and it's going to feel awesome.